Amongst the borders of Venezuela and Brazil, in the humid depths of the Amazon rainforest, live the Yanomami. The terrarium is flat and thick with animals, insects, and an abundance of vines, tall trees, and other medicinal and nutritional foliage.
6 months out of the year, the local indigenous people fight the rainy season, which consists of constant rainfall, heavy fog, and an infestation of insects. The other 6 months are dedicated to the dry season, a hot and dry period in which rivers dry up and rain ceases to be a constant in daily life.
The Amazon is a rich source of lumber and gold, making it a popular target for those who are lustful and through means of an end, are eager to obtain it.
Throughout history, the Yanomami have lived in relative isolation without contact from the outside world, but it is speculated that the British, Spanish, and Dutch made little contact with them during their earliest expeditions into South America. These run-ins made little and unnoticeable changes.
The Yanomami are deeply reliant on the Amazon's natural abundance of resources, fashioning a symbiotic relationship that is deeply rooted in respect. At the start of the 20th century, when the rest of the world turned to industrialism and mass production, the requisition to obtain capital wealth skyrocketed, and the Amazon became a topic of interest. Unfortunately, the Yanomami territory contains heinous amounts of gold and lumber, making it a popular target of industrial greed. This has resulted in the deaths of thousands of Yanomami as the legal miners attack their villages in pursuit of gold. Lumber companies have also significantly shrunk the tribe's territory through the process of deforestation. Missionaries have been trying to convert the Yanomami since the 1940s with little success. The presence has had damaging consequences, such as the introduction of epidemics and modernization. The governments of the countries they reside in also threaten their land by building dams and implementing little laws to guarantee their protection. The governments of Brazil and Venezuela did little to acknowledge and protect the tribe until they gained national attention from Napoleon Chagnon's controversial studies. Since the late 90s, these two governments have banned anthropologists from meeting with the Yanomami without authoritative permission.
The Yanomami, also referred to as the Yanomamo, are a tribe of approximately 26,000 people spread into about 250 separate villages. Village sizes range anywhere from 40 to 300 people. Location and proximity of these villages also vary in distance and social relation. Their language is a part of the Yanomami linguistic family called Ziranian. The Yanomami consist of at least 4 subgroups: Yanomame, Yanomami, Sanima, and Nina.
Tribes are semi-nomadic. During the dry seasons, a village will upheave their entire population and embark on an annual trek. Women and children stay at the movable base camps while the men go off hunting. Their more permanent settlements have garden plots and walls built to protect the villages from enemy attacks. It is here that you will find the infamous shabano. It's round, thatched together by vines and leaves, with a roof that does little to protect from rain. In the middle of the shabano is an open area meant for dancing, intermingling, and feast with allying villages. After a shabano has reached its limits, infested with bugs and decay, it will be burnt down and rebuilt again. Cotton is used to make hammocks, which are colorful and used for sleeping and guest.
The Yanomamo practice patrilocal residence and trace descent patrilineally. Patrilineal descent does not lead to the development of named kinship groups. Members of the same patrilineage refer to themselves as Mashi, which simply means people who are related patrilineally. Kin groups tend to be localized in villages, and their genealogical depth is rather shallow. Kinship is critical in the arrangement of marriage, and very strong bonds develop between kin groups who exchange women.
Yanomami kinship terminology is bifurcate merging with cousin terms. Relations between brothers-in-law, cross cousins, are close and intimate, whereas relations between same-sex parallel cousins are cool and reserved. A son-in-law should avoid his mother-in-law and be deferential and respectful to his father-in-law. Fire is a prominent tool used in each village. It is with this element that slash and burn horticulture is practiced.
In terms of food collection, the most prestigious form of gathering is through hunting. This activity is exclusively performed by the men within the community, while crops are tended and gathered by the women. In contrast to its prestige, hunting only composes of 10% of the Yanomami diet. Their primary source of nutrition is through crops and fishing. Gardens at base villages will make up for 80% of what the Yanomami eat. Fishing is an activity that is executed by males, females, and children that are able. The following clip from a Planet Express documentary shows the unique method that the Yanomami use to stun and catch their fish.
They fish in various places, and they use a poison, timbo, which they make by pulping up to 9 different varieties of plants. This is placed inside a basket made on the spot from leaves. Once the plant poison is made, it only remains to sieve the death trap through the water. The fluid it secretes extracts the oxygen from the water, and the stunned fish float to the surface, where all group members can easily kill them with arrows, knives, and machetes.
Politically, the Yanomami are fairly egalitarian, where opportunities lie within the grasp of any man willing to pursue them.
However, these rights are limited to women, who since birth are subordinated under patriarchal rule.
Tribes have very uncomplicated political structures, where they lack a prominent and defining hierarchical rank system. Instead, leadership, prestige, and status are gained through merit, not birthright. Only one position is automatically inherited. It is reserved for the man who has the largest local patrilineage. This person is the headman. The headman acts as a moral exemplar for the rest of the villagers. His behavior is to be admired, a platform in which others should act, a template for resolving conflict. To be a successful leader, the headman must rely on demonstrated skills in settling disputes, representing the interests of his lineage in dealing with allies and enemies. Styles of leadership vary across villages. Despite the amount of influence the headman seems to have, his power is not overarching, for his primary position is to act as host and conflict negotiator. When a village is large, or when 2 local descent groups are approximately equal in size, a village might have several headmen. Below the headmen, men of the tribe all share equal political stature. All villages are autonomous and free to make war or peace with whom they please.
You might have noticed so far, little has been mentioned about women. This is due to age, sex, and personal accomplishments being important status differentiators.
High status is acquired through valor in combat, accomplished oratory speaking, and expertise in shamanism. High status must be earned. Mature men virtually monopolize positions of political authority and religious practice. Local descent groups play important roles in regulating marriages and settling disputes within the village.
Coalitions between villages are important. Nevertheless, such coalitions tend to be fragile. Coalitions between tribes are upheld through trade, where each village is supposed to flaunt their specialized products.
Tobacco is considered to be a very popular recreational substance that even children indulge in. Subsequently, the word for poor in Yanomami language means to be without tobacco.
Gender is a very strict practice within the tribe. From an early age, girls are raised to be homemakers and aid their mothers with taking care of siblings. Little boys are often encouraged to take their anger out on their sisters, creating a culture where these beatings are normal, regular, and even expected. However, when a woman reaches a certain age, men are not supposed to carry out beatings.
A woman's main goal is to have children, whereas a man's is to bring honor to the family. Young girls are promised to older men for marriage at early ages. It is when she reaches puberty that the marriage is consummated.
When a girl starts puberty, she begins her transformation into womanhood. Menstruation is considered poisonous, and women are kept away from the rest of the village. It is at this time that women are forbidden to go into their garden plots.
The Yanomami believe in animism, a spiritual practice that is heavily reliant on the belief that every living organism and non-living object has a spirit. Sickness is caused by Hakura, or bad spirits, that can be cured by village shamans.
The Yanomami believe that the cosmos consists of 4 parallel planes or layers. The uppermost layer is empty, but was once occupied by ancient beings who descended to lower layers. The second layer, or sky, is the home of spirits of dead men and women, and it resembles the earth except that hunting is better, the food tastier, and the spirits of people are young and beautiful. The third layer is the earth, and below the earth is the fourth layer, or underworld. In relation to spirit, the Yanomami believe that illness is induced by the invasion of a Hakura spirit sent from enemy tribes. These spirits ingest a part of the host's soul, consequently leading to the development of sickness. Hakura spirits, which are evil in nature and often regarded as beautiful, are each individualistic in their level of aggressiveness. Different spirits produce different ailments, but the most belligerent and feared of all spirits are the hot and meat-hungry. These hostile spirits don't just eat parts of the soul, but consume them in their entirety. Village healers, or shamans, conjure assailants to counter the current infestation. These assailants are Hakura spirits that live within the shaman's chest and can only be communicated or manipulated with when the shaman is under the influence of hallucinogenic drugs.
When a villager dies, the tribe performs a ritual known as spiritual death. Because the soul could enter another life form, the Yanomami do not hunt special kinds of birds which are seen as possible containers for the souls of dead tribe members. Following the religious beliefs of the Yanomami, the soul is only able to achieve a full salvation if the body is burnt after death and the ash is eaten up by the family and relatives of the dead person. So in contrast to the funeral rites which are practiced all around the world, the Yanomami do not bury the corpse. In a ceremony, the dead body is burned down and the remaining ash and bones are collected by the remaining relatives. During this ceremony, they cry and sing sad songs while their faces and bodies are blackened with grime. After the burning, the bones are crumbled, and together with the ash, the remains are put into a large pot where they are kept until the second part of the funeral ceremony. Between these two phases, there could be a long time span because the Yanomami delay the second step until there is a festivity. As a part of this festivity, bananas, which comprise the majority of the Yanomami diet, are cooked and the resultant banana mush will be mixed with the ash and bone of the dead tribe member. Then all of the relatives gather to eat up the mush.
In terms of controversy, Napoleon Chagnon is regarded as one of the most famous anthropologists to study the Yanomami.
Firstly, when discussing Chagnon's research, it is important to note the historical context in which his studies took place.
In the beginnings, anthropology was thought of as a discipline mostly done through observation. This emphasis on strictly observational research has slowly shifted in the last century. This change was revolutionary in the sense that anthropologists recognized the growing necessity to understand culture in its given context, not from afar, but from within.
This eventually led to anthropologists not only submerging themselves in cultures, but also introducing outside resources and materials to see how the people they were studying would react to them.
Chagnon is considered a pioneer in the execution of these methods. However, most anthropologists agree that his work was, at the very least, abysmally unethical.
Most of Shagnon's writings are aimed to depict the Yanomami people as a violent group of heartless savages. In Shagnon's account of his first confrontation with the tribe, it is clear that his agenda is to convince the rest of the world of this opinion.
He crept through the low entrance of a Shabano, startling a group of Yanomami warriors, the dozen filthy, hideous men who had just concluded a bloody club fight with the neighboring village over the abduction of 7 women. Immense wads of green tobacco were stuck between their lower teeth and lips, making them look even more hideous, Chagnon wrote, and strands of dark green slime dripped or hung from their noses.
One of the most controversial actions of Napoleon was his introduction of metal tools to the Yanomami people to see how they would use them. This in turn instigated and inflamed pre-existing violence by giving one tribe a distinct advantage over enemy tribes.
Napoleon's partner, James Neal, also initially introduced measles to the Yanomami to study if they had any natural immunities to the virus. This, of course, killed several people, but Chagnon saw it as a necessary evil to further his scientific studies.
The Yanomami themselves deny Shagnon's representation of their culture. Davy Koponawa, a Yanomami shaman, presents a popular Yanomami argument against Shagnon's research. He claims Chagnon convinced the Yanomami people to fight each other, paying the men to stage fights for the books and documentaries he produced.
Another popular argument is that the presence of Western influence invoked hostility into the already tense social atmosphere. The introduction of Western illness, culture, and religions can be correlated with growing frustration and aggressiveness amongst villagers, causing the Yanomami to act in ways that wouldn't typically be considered normal of their culture.
Shagnon's representation has painted the Yanomami as barbarians that need to be civilized, reinforcing the commonly held belief that cultures lacking modern Western foundations are inferior and less evolved.
Chagnon's representation of the Yanomami as violent, barbaric entities perpetuates the ideology that their culture is less than human and animalistic in nature, consequently leading to the false idea that they were unworthy of human consideration.
With this false mindset of the Yanomami as something less than human, gold miners have infested their lands, killing any that stand in their way. In 1993, a group of miners murdered 16 Yanomami people. In their haste to gain wealth, the miners killed who they thought only to be roadblocks standing in their way to their dreams. This controversy made Chagnon one of the most popular and discussed figures in anthropology, and the only social scientist asked to stand trial and have his research evaluated by the Anthropological Board.
Mining has led to the pollution of Amazonian rivers and streams, poisoning the Yanomami's water supply with mercury, sadly creating an unfortunate, less than optimistic prediction of the Yanomami's inevitable extinction within the next century. The poor Yanomami also went through a 40-year trial demanding that they get some blood samples back. That's right. Scientists came through the area taking blood samples for scientific research, and it only became a problem after they failed to give it back. The spirits of the people they collected samples from were stuck in a sort of purgatory from not being destroyed with the rest of their bodies after death. Based on the information you've learned from this video, do you think the anthropologists mentioned were in violation of any ethical human and cultural rights? What can anthropologists do to ensure cultural and human rights aren't being violated when conducting field work? And what should leaving no footprints entail?